The alien council sat in silent anticipation, eyes fixed on the holographic display before them. The room hummed with quiet energy, each member awaiting the latest transmission from the outer systems. It was supposed to be another routine observation mission, nothing more than a typical scan of a distant star system. Yet the image on the display was anything but ordinary. The human ship, its sleek design far more advanced than anything the Council had ever expected from a species once considered primitive, appeared on screen. The ship's massive hull reflected the light of distant stars, its dark, gleaming surface hiding advanced weaponry and technology. Alien symbols were etched along the ship's sides, strange and unfamiliar, but unmistakably human in origin. And it was moving with purpose, cutting through the void as if it had always belonged to the stars. Zalinar, the council leader, leaned forward, their pale skin gleaming under the harsh lights of the room. Their elongated fingers traced the edges of the holographic display, their eyes narrowing with disbelief. This was impossible. This ship should not exist. Humanity had been written off, forgotten by the greater galactic community, left to their primitive ways on their isolated planet. Yet here it was. How is this possible? Zalnar's voice was low, almost a whisper. They weren't asking anyone. In particular, the question was a plea, a desperate grasp for understanding. Another council member, Varol, a younger but equally influential figure, stepped forward, his eyes glued to the screen. It appears to be fully operational. Advanced propulsion systems, active weaponry, and... He paused, his voice faltering. Is that a cloaking device? The signatures are consistent with known cloaking technology. But the humans... Zalnar cut them off, their voice tight with disbelief. They shouldn't be able to master such technology. Their entire species should have been eliminated or subdued by now. We've had centuries to monitor their progress. They should have remained a footnote in history. Perhaps we underestimated. Them, Varol said, his voice laced with unease. Zalnar stood, pacing the length of the observation chamber. This ship... No, these humans, they're a threat. They've evolved in ways we couldn't predict. This isn't just a ship, it's a warning. The room fell silent, each council member processing the gravity of the situation. The human ship moved steadily across the screen, its trajectory unknown, its intentions unclear. It was far from an ordinary warship. It was something far more dangerous. We must respond, Zalnar declared, their voice steady, though a flicker of fear danced behind their gaze. We cannot allow this anomaly to exist unchecked. Their presence could destabilize the balance of power in the galaxy. They must be neutralized before they become a threat to us all. Varol turned to Zalnar, his eyes wide with apprehension. We've only just discovered them. We don't know enough to make such a drastic decision. There are protocols. The protocols are irrelevant, Zalnar snapped, their voice cold. This is no ordinary encounter. This is a new stage of evolution for humanity, one that we cannot afford to ignore. The tension in the room thickened as the council members exchanged uneasy glances. The possibility of war loomed large. War with a species that had been thought insignificant, irrelevant, but now they stood at the precipice of something entirely unexpected. The very foundation of their understanding of the galaxy was beginning to crumble, and with it their sense of control. As the debate continued, Zalnar's mind raced. The humans, with their unpredictable nature and relentless drive, had always been a source of irritation. But now they were a force to be reckoned with, a force capable of reshaping the galaxy's power structure. Zalnar could already hear the whispers of fear growing among the council members. They were afraid, not of the human ship, but of what it represented, the unknown. Zalnar turned sharply toward the communications officer who had been monitoring the human ship's movements. Send a message, a warning. We must communicate with them. Let them. Know that they are treading on dangerous ground. We will not tolerate their presence." The officer hesitated, their fingers hovering over the console. "Commander, the humans have not responded to our previous transmissions. The data we've collected indicates that their technology is far beyond what we anticipated. We cannot be certain that our message will even reach them." Zalnar's eyes burned with a cold fury. "Then we will make them listen. Open a channel now." With a reluctant nod, the officer began transmitting the message, a warning of their own. The council watched in silence as the message was sent. The holographic display flickering with the words, "You are trespassing on forbidden territory. Cease your approach immediately or face the consequences." For a moment, the room held its breath. Then the unthinkable happened. The human ship, which had been silently advancing, suddenly changed course, heading directly for the alien fleet's position. The message had been received, but it wasn't just a response. It was an unmistakable challenge. Zalnar's heart raced. "They're coming for us," they murmured, disbelief creeping into their voice. "They've already made their move." The message was clear. The humans weren't afraid. They didn't care about the consequences. They were coming, and nothing would stop them. Zalnar's mind spun with possibilities, none of them good. The ship from a Class 15 death world wasn't just a ship. It was a weapon, a symbol of humanity's defiance. And the galaxy was about to learn a painful lesson about underestimating the humans. A decision had to be made. The Council was no longer in control. "Prepare the fleet," Zalnar ordered, their voice steel. "And do it now. This will be the fight of our lives." The screen flickered as the alien fleet moved into position, their ships arrayed in perfect formation, each vessel sleek and deadly. Zalnar stood at the head of the command center, watching with cold determination as the human ship, Indomitable, as it was now identified, continued its slow, deliberate approach. The fleet, once a symbol of power, now felt fragile in comparison. The unrelenting march of the Indomitable felt like a looming storm, and with every passing second, the tension in the command center grew thicker. Zalnar's hands gripped the edge of the console, their knuckles white as they stared at the holographic projection of the Indomitable closing in. The comms officer stood by, their hands poised above the console, ready to relay any incoming messages. But there were no communications from the humans. They had already sent their warning, and now they were coming. "Are we sure it's human?" Varel's voice broke the tense silence. He stood at Zalnar's side, eyes fixed on the display. "This ship, its technology, its weapons, nothing we've seen before. They shouldn't have been able to develop it." Zalnar turned to Varel, their eyes sharp. "That's what makes them so dangerous. They've been underestimated, ignored by the galaxy, but we're paying the price now. Maybe we should consider negotiating, offer peace. Their ship it's powerful, but it's alone. We could outnumber them," Varel suggested, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "Negotiation? With them?" Zalnar's voice was icy. "You think they care about peace? They came here for one reason, dominance, and they'll get it by any means necessary." There was no hesitation in Zalnar's words, no room for doubt. Humanity had reached the point where they no longer needed the galaxy's approval, and now they were making their presence known. The Indomitable was on a direct course toward the fleet. No evasive maneuvers, no attempts to hide. It was as if the ship was daring them to do something, daring them to strike first. The aliens had long been accustomed to instilling fear with their sheer numbers, their advanced technology, but humanity's unyielding approach felt like a slap in the face. "Commander," the communications officer called out, "we've intercepted their comms. It's a transmission to our fleet." Zalnar narrowed their eyes. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and a voice, cold and sharp, came through. The speakers, the words laced with an unmistakable authority. It was human, and it was unmistakably a threat. "This is Commander Kyle Doran of the Indomitable. We've received your warning, and we've decided to respond in kind. You have one chance to leave this space alive. Do not mistake our silence for weakness. We are not interested in diplomacy or negotiations. If you want a fight, you will get it. But know this, you are the ones trespassing here, and we will not show mercy. There was no fear in Doran's voice, no hesitation, just an icy certainty, as though the very concept of losing was unthinkable. It sent a ripple through the council, and for a moment even Zalnar felt the weight of the message. It wasn't just a challenge, it was a declaration of war. Zalnar's eyes burned with fury, their anger mounting. How dare they speak to us like this? They think they can threaten us? Varal watched the exchange, a knot of worry tightening in his stomach. Commander, if we fight them, if we truly go to war with them, we might not come back. This isn't like any battle we've fought before. Zalnar turned to Varal, their expression hardening. This is no longer about winning, Varal. This is about survival. We cannot let humanity believe they can walk over us. If we let them have even a fraction of our space, they will come for the rest. And they will not stop. Zalnar's gaze turned back to the screen, where the Indomitable was now almost upon them, its sleek silhouette cutting through the darkness of space. The alien fleet remained in formation, but doubt lingered in the air. They were not used to uncertainty, and yet here they were, unsure of how to face a species that had grown too powerful too quickly. The silence in the command center was broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines, the low murmur of voices, and the sharp commands from Zalnar. Prepare for battle stations, raise shields, activate all weapon systems, and if they think we'll cower, they are gravely mistaken. Varal watched the comms officer as the crew scrambled to respond to the orders. He could see the fear in the officer's eyes, the way their hands shook as they worked, trying to bring the fleet systems online. But the officer's fear wasn't the only one in the room. Zalnar's command had been absolute before, but now there was a crack in their confidence. They weren't sure they could win this fight, and yet they had no choice but to try. The Indomitable continued its approach, its engines roaring as it cut through the blackness. Inside, Commander Doran stood at the helm, his eyes cold and focused on the screen in front of him. The alien fleet was already in formation, but they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity. They had no idea what was incoming. Status report, Doran said, his voice calm and measured. Shields are at full strength, Commander, his lieutenant reported, her voice unwavering. Weapons systems are online. EMP pulse ready for deployment. Doran nodded, his gaze fixed on the holographic map before him. The fleet was formidable, but humanity had something they didn't. Technology honed for survival. A will to win at all costs. The aliens had spent centuries conquering worlds, but humanity had learned the art of war the hard way. The officer turned to Doran. Commander, they're sending another transmission. Should we respond? Doran's lips curled into a small smile. No, let them stew in their uncertainty. The time for words has passed. His hands moved over the controls, activating the first phase of their strategy. The ship's cloaking device hummed to life, disappearing into the shadows of space. The fleet would have no idea what hit them. Initiate Phase 2, Doran ordered, his voice steady. The Indomitable's engines shifted as it began to phase in and out of reality, cloaking itself in the folds of space-time. The aliens would never see it coming. EMP pulse ready in 5. The lieutenant called. The countdown began, a soft ticking that filled the tense silence of the bridge. Doran's heart raced, but his hands remained steady, his mind locked into the rhythm of battle. They would hit the aliens first, hit them hard. EMP pulse in 3, 2, 1. The pulse shot from the Indomitable, a silent burst of energy that cut through the space between them and the alien fleet. The alien ships, already facing the unknown threat of humanity's technology, didn't stand a chance. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Zalnar's eyes widened as the fleet's systems began to fail. It started with the smallest ships, their engines sputtering before shutting down completely. Then the larger vessels followed suit. Panic rippled through the command center. "They've activated their EMP," Varal whispered, his voice trembling. We can't respond. We're dead in the water." Zalnar turned to face their crew, their voice a snarl of frustration. "Get it back online, now!" But it was too late. The humans had already seized the advantage. The battle had begun. The alien fleet drifted helplessly, their once proud warships now nothing more than floating husks, completely paralyzed by the EMP pulse from the Indomitable. The initial shock of the pulse had reverberated through their systems like a thunderclap, knocking out communication channels, weapon systems, and propulsion. Zalnar's command center was filled with frantic voices, the officers scrambling to regain control of their failing systems. Zalnar stood motionless, at the helm, fists clenched, watching the glowing holographic display that showed the extent of the damage. His face, usually stern and unyielding, now betrayed a flicker of fear, something he had never felt before in all his years of commanding fleets. "Commander," one of the officers said, voice quivering with dread. "The human ship. It's moving. Again, it's heading straight toward us. They've broken our defenses with that pulse." Zalnar's gaze flickered to the screen, where the Indomitable was now fully visible, its dark form cutting through the vacuum of space with terrifying precision. It was as though the ship was an extension of the very void itself, moving with an eerie calm, like a predator circling its prey. "They're coming for us," Varal's voice cracked, unable to hide the unease that gripped him. "We can't stop them, Commander. We've lost control of the fleet." Zalnar's heart raced. They had never anticipated such a brutal, unrelenting assault from a species once deemed insignificant. How could this have happened? Humanity had not only built the perfect weapon, they had brought it to the heart of the galaxy. And now they were showing the aliens the cost of underestimating them. The comms officer spoke up, his voice trembling. "We've intercepted another transmission from the humans. It's a direct message to us." Zalnar's eyes narrowed, filled with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "Put it through." The screen flickered again, and this time, Commander Kyle Doran's face appeared on the holographic display. His eyes were cold, calculating like a predator toying with its prey before striking. His face was free of emotion, but there was an undeniable weight in his voice. "Zalnar," Doran's voice came through the comms, cool and confident. "I trust you're enjoying the view. It must be frustrating to watch your fleet crumble under the weight of a weapon you can't even understand." Zalnar's fists clenched at the sound of Doran's words. "You think this is over?" he hissed, his voice laced with venom. "You've made a grave mistake, human. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Doran's smile was cold, but there was a certain amusement in his eyes as he spoke again. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. You were right about one thing, Zalnar. This is no ordinary fight. And you're right that we don't understand your technology, but that's because we don't need to. We don't need to understand it to destroy it." Zalnar seethed. The confidence in Doran's voice was maddening. He knew the human commander's words were meant to goad him, to shake his resolve. But it was working. It was as though Doran had already won, and now he was savoring every moment. Doran's voice cut through the silence, growing colder with every syllable. "I'll give you a choice, Zalnar. You can retreat, and I'll allow your ships to leave this sector, or you can stay and face the consequences. This is your last warning. The next move is ours." The transmission cut abruptly, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. The alien council was paralyzed with fear, their faces drained of color as the weight of Doran's words settled over them. For the first time in their lives, they felt powerless. This wasn't just a battle, it was a turning point. Zalnar's mind raced. What had they done wrong? How had they let this happen? Their technology, their fleets, they were supposed to be invincible. And yet, here they were, trapped, outgunned by a species they had once considered beneath them. The human ship had already proven itself capable of things the aliens could only dream of. "Commander," Varel spoke, his voice uncertain, "they've given us an ultimatum. We can retreat or fight, but we can't win this battle, not with our current state." Zalnar remained silent, staring at the flickering display of the Indomitable. The human ship was already moving closer, its dark form cutting through space with terrifying purpose. In the distance, the remaining alien ships were still struggling to regain control of their systems, but they were too slow, too damaged. The humans had already claimed victory, whether the Council acknowledged it or not. "We fight," Zalnar finally said, his voice low but resolute. "We do not run. We will make them understand that we are not to be taken lightly." Varel looked at Zalnar, uncertainty still etched on his face. "But we've lost. The humans have already won. What are we fighting for now?" Zalnar's eyes were fierce. "We fight for survival. We fight because we cannot allow humanity to think they can dominate us. We must make them pay for their insolence. For our honor, and for the future of the galaxy." The rest of the council remained silent. There was no turning back now. The decision had been made. As the Indomitable drew nearer, Zalnar barked out, "Orders to the fleet. Activate all weapon systems. Target the human ship. Full offensive. We have one chance at this." The command center came to life, officers scrambling to engage the remaining functional weapon systems. The ships, still struggling to regain control, began to power up their weapons, their turrets tracking the Indomitable. The alien fleet fired first. A barrage of energy blasts erupted from their ships, slicing through space, targeting the human ship with all the might they could muster. But the Indomitable moved with eerie grace, effortlessly dodging the incoming fire, its cloaking system flickering in and out as it evaded every blast. The aliens were firing blindly, their attacks useless. "Is that all you have?" Doran's voice came again, cutting through the comms. "You're wasting your time." The Indomitable responded with devastating force. The human ship fired a series of high-intensity beams, cutting through the alien ships like a hot knife through butter. One after another, the alien vessels disintegrated, their hulls exploding in flashes of light. The once proud fleet was crumbling under the assault, unable to counter the overwhelming firepower of the human ship. Zalnar's eyes widened in disbelief. "No, this cannot be happening!" But it was happening. The human ship had already proven itself to be more than a match for the alien fleet. And now it was clear that humanity's victory was inevitable. "Commander, we can't hold them off," Varel said, his voice shaking with fear. "It's over. We've lost." Zalnar stood frozen, their gaze fixed on the destruction unfolding before them. The alien fleet was disintegrating, their ships falling apart under the relentless barrage of the human weaponry. The realization hit hard. The battle was lost, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The last ship in the alien fleet detonated in a brilliant flash of light, leaving behind nothing but debris. The Indomitable hovered in space, its weapons still primed, its sensors scanning for any remaining threats. Zalnar's hands dropped to their sides, defeated. There was no denying it now. Humanity had won, and they had come to stay. The silence that followed the destruction of the last alien vessel was deafening. The vastness of space seemed to stretch endlessly, as though the universe itself were holding its breath. The Indomitable floated in the void, its dark silhouette looming ominously over the remains of the alien fleet. The human ship, battered, but triumphant, was alone now, its mission complete. No one had expected it to come to this. Humanity had been underestimated, and the galaxy had learned a painful lesson about underestimating the most dangerous species of all. Inside the command center of the Indomitable, Commander Kyle Doran stood at the helm, his face set in stone. His crew was silent, each person still processing the scale of what had just happened. The destruction of an entire alien fleet was no small feat, but it was not a victory to be celebrated. It was an inevitable step for humanity, an act of survival, of revenge, and of reclaiming a place in the galaxy that had long been denied. "Status report," Doran said, his voice calm, betraying no sign of the emotional toll the battle had taken on him. It was the same tone he had used throughout the mission, controlled, unwavering, resolute. "Fleet status, complete destruction of alien forces," his lieutenant replied, her voice clipped, but tinged with something else, relief perhaps, or disbelief. "All systems are functional, no further threats detected in the vicinity." Doran nodded, but said nothing. His gaze turned to the view screen, which still displayed the wreckage of the alien ships, floating in the vast emptiness of space. The debris was scattered like broken pieces of shattered dreams. There was no celebration for the fallen enemy, no joy in the carnage. For Doran, there was only the somber weight of what had transpired. The Indomitable had been built for this, built for war, but that didn't make the cost any easier to bear. "We've proven our point," Doran finally said, his voice soft but resolute. "Humanity is not to be trifled with. The galaxy will learn to respect us." There was a pause before his lieutenant spoke again, her voice quieter this time. "But at what cost, Commander? We've lost so much to get here." Doran turned to face her, his eyes locked onto hers. "At any cost, Lieutenant. The loss of life, the destruction of this fleet, it was necessary. We didn't ask for this war, but we've finished it. We've shown them what happens when you push humanity too far." As Doran spoke, the screen shifted, showing the remnants of the alien flagship. It was barely recognizable, twisted metal and smoldering wreckage floating in the darkness, a symbol of the alien race's arrogance, now reduced to nothing more than scrap. The transmission that had come through earlier played again in Doran's mind, Zalnar's voice filled with uncertainty, their words laced with panic. "You think you can threaten us?" Zalnar had said. "You think you can dominate us?" Doran had given them a choice, to retreat or face the consequences. The aliens had chosen to fight, and now they were gone. There was no retreat, no redemption. The Indomitable had claimed victory, but as Doran stood there surveying the wreckage, a nagging thought tugged at the back of his mind. The galaxy was vast. There were always more enemies, more threats lurking in the shadows. What would happen next? Would the other civilizations see humanity as a threat to be eliminated, or would they recognize the cost of underestimating Earth? "Commander," the lieutenant spoke again, breaking his reverie. "What now?" Doran turned to her, a dark smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Now, we send a message. Humanity is no longer just a blip on the radar. We're here to stay." His fingers moved across the console, and the communication systems powered up. The holographic screen blinked to life, displaying a wide shot of the wreckage of the alien fleet. The image was chilling, the remnants of the once proud vessels floating like the aftermath of a storm. "To the galaxy," Doran's voice rang out, calm and authoritative as he began to send the transmission. "We are humanity, and we are no longer to be ignored. Let this be a reminder. No one is safe from our wrath. We will defend our home, and we will claim our place among the stars." The transmission went live, sending the message across the galaxy, the words echoing in the void. There would be no turning back now. Humanity had made its mark, and the universe would never be the same. As the transmission ended, Doran stood, still for a moment staring at the screen. There was no doubt in his mind that the galaxy had learned its lesson. They had pushed humanity to the edge, and now they had seen the result. The Indomitable had proven that humans were no longer the weak, unimportant species they had once been. "We've done it," Doran said quietly, as though speaking more to himself than anyone else. Now we rebuild. Now we make sure they know our strength." The lieutenant nodded. "What about Zalnar's race, sir? Will they retaliate?" Doran's gaze turned cold. "They'll think twice before they do, and if they don't, we'll be ready." The crew fell into a quiet lull as Doran stood by the viewport, staring out into the infinite expanse of space. The Indomitable had proven itself in ways no one could have predicted, but this was only the beginning. As the stars stretched out before them, Doran knew that the human race was no longer the underdog. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but humanity had shown that it was capable of anything. They had risen from the ashes of their enemies, stronger and more united than ever, and as long as the Indomitable sailed through the stars, humanity's legacy would never be forgotten. In the distance, the galaxy waited, and humanity was no longer afraid to claim its place within it.